Imagine being a homeless child on the streets of Lahore in the late 1990s. You're hungry, cold, and desperate for help. A kind-looking man offers you food and shelter. You follow him, grateful for his generosity. But this man is Javed Iqbal, and you've just become his next victim. For 100 children, this nightmare became a reality. Their story and the hunt for their killer is one that will haunt you long after this video ends. How does a man from a wealthy family become Pakistan's most notorious child killer? What drives someone to commit such unthinkable acts against society's most defenseless? The case of Javed Iqbal, who confessed to murdering 100 boys in Lahore, forces us to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. By the end of this video, you'll understand how this tragedy unfolded and why it could happen again. In December 1999, a chilling 32-page confession arrived at the Lahore police station. Its contents would shock the city to its core, detailing the murders of 100 boys over an 18-month period. The author of this gruesome manifesto was Javed Iqbal, a man whose privileged background made his descent into depravity all the more perplexing. Born in 1956 to a wealthy family in Lahore, Pakistan, Iqbal's early life was one of comfort and opportunity. He received a private education and had access to financial security that most in Pakistan could only dream of. Yet, despite these advantages, warning signs of his future crimes began to emerge early on. As a young adult, Iqbal's behavior raised eyebrows when he began housing multiple homeless boys in his residence. This seemingly charitable act took on a sinister tone in 1990 when he was accused of sodomy and rape of a young boy. The incident led to his arrest and a 6-month prison sentence. Upon his release, Iqbal's family, desperate to curb his deviant behavior, pushed him into 2 marriages. Both unions failed, doing nothing to address the darkness growing within him. In 1992, following his father's death, Iqbal inherited a substantial sum of 3 million rupees. Instead of using this windfall for good, he purchased a large house in Lahore that would later become the site of unspeakable horrors. It was around this time that Iqbal established a video game arcade, a business that on the surface seemed innocent enough. However, this establishment served a far more sinister purpose. It became his hunting ground. The arcade specifically targeted young boys, many of whom were homeless and vulnerable. Iqbal would often invite his favorites back to his nearby residence. What should have been a safe haven for these children became a place of terror and death. As time went on, Iqbal's predatory behavior escalated, with the arcade providing him a steady stream of potential victims. For years, Iqbal operated undetected, his privileged background and seemingly normal business ventures masking the warning signs of a budding serial killer. The discovery of his crimes sent shockwaves through Lahore, forcing the city to confront the dark underbelly of child exploitation that had been lurking beneath its surface. The case of Javed Iqbal serves as a chilling reminder that evil can hide behind even the most respectable facades. His story raises disturbing questions about how a man from such a privileged background could commit such heinous acts against society's most vulnerable members. In 1998, Lahore's streets harbored a dark secret. Amid the bustling city, an estimated 5,000 homeless children struggled to survive, unaware that a predator lurked in their midst. Javed Iqbal, a man whose privileged background belied his sinister intentions, began a killing spree that would shock the nation and expose the vulnerability of society's most defenseless. Iqbal's reign of terror targeted boys between the ages of 6 and 16, luring them with promises of food, shelter, and clothing. These basic necessities, so desperately needed by the street children, became deadly bait. Once in his grasp, Iqbal subjected his victims to a horrifying ordeal. He photographed the boys before sexually assaulting them, creating a grotesque record of his crimes. The periods of captivity varied, with some children held for mere hours, while others endured months of torment before meeting their tragic end. The killer's method of dispatch was as cold and calculated as his selection process. Iqbal strangled his victims, silencing their cries and extinguishing young lives with his bare hands. But the horror didn't end with their deaths. In a gruesome attempt to erase all evidence, Iqbal dissolved the bodies in acid, leaving little trace of the children's existence. This meticulous process allowed him to continue his spree undetected, as the transient nature of his victims meant few, if any, missing person reports were filed. Police later discovered Iqbal's diary, a chilling testament to his depravity. The journal contained detailed accounts of each murder, including dates and information about the victims. This macabre ledger would become crucial evidence, providing investigators with a haunting glimpse into the mind of a killer who saw his victims not as human beings, but as entries in a twisted catalog. The scale of Iqbal's crimes went unnoticed for an alarming period. The very factors that made these children vulnerable to exploitation, their homelessness, lack of family connections, and society's indifference, also shielded Iqbal from detection. As the body count rose, the absence of these boys from Lahore's streets barely registered in the public consciousness. Iqbal's killing spree exposed more than just the actions of one depraved individual. It laid bare the systemic failures that allowed such atrocities to occur unchecked. The ease with which he preyed upon Lahore's homeless youth population highlighted the dire need for better protection and support systems for vulnerable children. The discovery of his crimes sent shockwaves through Pakistani society, forcing a painful confrontation with the issue of child exploitation that had long been ignored or swept under the rug. The shockwaves from Javed Iqbal's confession rippled through Lahore, leaving authorities scrambling to apprehend the self-proclaimed killer of 100 boys. On December 30th, 1999, the manhunt came to a dramatic conclusion when Iqbal surrendered himself at the office of the Daily Jang newspaper. He arrived disheveled, carrying 2 satchels filled with damning evidence of his crimes. In a chilling statement to journalists, Iqbal declared, "I am Javed Iqbal, killer of 100 boys. I hate this world. I am not ashamed of my actions. and I am ready to die." Within minutes of Iqbal's confession, the newspaper office was surrounded by 100 armed soldiers. The killer's surrender marked the end of a frantic search that had gripped the city since the discovery of his 32-page manifesto detailing his heinous acts. Police swiftly took Iqbal into custody, their relief at capturing the notorious predator tempered by the horrific nature of his crimes. The investigation expanded rapidly. Law enforcement officers descended upon Iqbal's residence, where they arrested 4 teenage boys believed to be his accomplices. The young men's involvement raised disturbing questions about the extent of Iqbal's influence and the potential for a wider network of child exploitation. During interrogation, Iqbal displayed a disturbing lack of remorse. He coldly stated that he could have killed 500 boys but stopped at 100 as it was his set goal. This calculated approach to mass murder sent chills through even the most hardened investigators. Iqbal's twisted justification for his actions emerged during questioning. He claimed his motive was revenge against the police for alleged mistreatment, stating, "I want 100 mothers to cry for their children." The killer's capture brought a mix of relief and horror to Lahore's residents. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, the community grappled with the knowledge that such atrocities had occurred undetected for so long. Parents of missing children faced the grim task of potentially identifying their loved ones from the evidence Iqbal had meticulously collected. As investigators delved deeper into Iqbal's crimes, unsettling details emerged about the fate of one of his teenage accomplices. Reports surfaced that the young man had died in police custody. While authorities claimed it was a suicide, many suspected foul play, believing the boy had been beaten to death. This development cast a shadow over the investigation, raising concerns about police conduct and the treatment of potential witnesses. The capture of Javed Iqbal marked the end of his reign of terror, but it was only the beginning of a long and painful process for Lahore. The city now faced the daunting task of confronting the systemic failures that had allowed a serial killer to prey on its most vulnerable citizens for so long. The case exposed deep-rooted issues of child exploitation, poverty, and neglect that had festered beneath the surface of Pakistani society. The trial of Javed Iqbal concluded with a controversial sentence that matched the brutality of his crimes. The judge ordered Iqbal to be strangled to death in front of the victim's parents, then dismembered and dissolved in acid, mirroring his own gruesome methods. This verdict sparked outcry from human rights groups, leading to its revision to a standard death penalty. However, justice would take an unexpected turn. On October 8, 2001, guards at Kot Lakhpat jail made a grim discovery. Javed Iqbal and his main accomplice, Sajid Ahmad, were found dead in their prison cells. The circumstances surrounding their deaths were immediately suspicious. Autopsy results revealed both men had been beaten prior to their deaths, raising allegations of extrajudicial punishment. The official cause was reported as suicide, but many doubted this explanation. The case of Javed Iqbal left an indelible mark on Pakistan's national conscience. It exposed critical failures in child protection systems, and highlighted the extreme vulnerability of street children. The shocking nature and scale of Iqbal's crimes forced a painful reckoning with issues long ignored by society. If you found this story thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe to support more stories like this.